Today's title, Shabbat Hanukkah, Rebuilding the Inner Temple, is based on a Torah from Rabbi Nachman, Torah Zion of the second section of Likutei Moharan, Tanyana, and it's the 12th paragraph for anybody who wants to follow. And he tells us an amazing secret and connection between Hanukkah, Yom Kippur, and the Holy Temple. And of course, there's a Holy Temple within and a Holy Temple in the cosmic realm, and hopefully there'll be one in the physical realm in not too long. And remember what the rabbis teach, that if the non-Jews knew what they lost when the temple was destroyed, they would weep more than we do. Well, hopefully we're weeping once in a while and sense what we've lost, because the temple provided constant atonement to the entire nation. That no man went to sleep or got up in the morning with sin on his back. And Rabbi Nachman calls this the heaviest weight that a person can carry is the weight of sin itself, the weight of disconnection from our life source. Because that's essentially what sin is, disconnection from the eternal life source that is at the depth of every human soul. Now the Rebbe begins, this is Bechinat Hanukkah. Ki inyan Hanukkah da. We should know that the subject of Hanukkah is this. Ki az b'shat suda me'ira adam haratzon shehu bechinat ha'era. This is the time of illumination when a person sits down to eat a holy meal. And the surrounding lights come around this person. And this is an idea that we should be quiet when we eat, because the surrounding lights are coming into a person's mind. And when these surrounding lights become internal lights, and when they become internal lights, that's the beginning of the rebuilding of your inner temple. And when the external light becomes internal, when an idea becomes part of you, when it's a thought that becomes embedded in your heart. And this is Hanukkah. Ki inyan Hanukkah, he goes on to tell us, da ki kol achad me'achad kefi ma shezocheh lif'or bekashato b'yom kippurin. Every person, according to what he's able to cause to affect on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the day we fast and ask God for forgiveness for every level of creation. Each person has their ability to cause that atonement, according to his desire, according to his purity, according to the hard work and his sincerity. He's able to create a spiritual atonement. And guess what it does? Da'inu bakashat salachna, which is the request of forgive this am, because this is what Hanukkah is. Ki al yedei salachna, through the forgiveness naaseh Hanukkah. Forgiveness creates Hanukkah. Why? Well, Hanukkah stands for the Hanukkah Tabayit, the rebuilding of the Mikdash. And taking in the Hanukkah story, taking it back from the Greeks, the occupying force. Ki Moshe Rabbeinu bikesh salachna la'am la'avona amazeh. Moses requested, when he came down with the second tablets, actually the first tablets, when they were broken because of the sin of the golden calf, and God said, Salachna la'avona amazeh, forgive the sin of this nation. Now, can you stand and pray for the forgiveness of 3 million people? Well, why not? You think you have to be Moses to pray for 3 million people? Not at all. In God's ear, it's precious, especially when you're not a Moses. When you're just another Jew, but you pray for people, you cause an atonement for other people, especially those people who don't even know the power of prayer. So this is Salachna la'avona amazeh, that by requesting the forgiveness from God, we actually create the vessel to rebuild the Mikdash. Okay, so we have to think about this a long time. What is the Mikdash? The Mikdash is the place of atonement. Every afternoon, we bring the Mincha Ben Arbayim. Every morning, we bring the Tamid offering, and those induce from heaven new forgiveness for the Am. So the Beit HaMikdash is the building of forgiveness. But guess what? Your heart is the building of forgiveness as well. And so by requesting Salachna la'avona amazeh, by requesting that God forgive us, and we're talking about all Jews in every place, religious or non-religious, affiliated or out in the wilds of Alaska, it doesn't matter. Salachna la'avona amazeh induces God to forgive. He looks at us, he says, wow, these people are caring for each other and they're requesting forgiveness for each other. It's so much more powerful than when a person just asks for himself, especially this idea of forgiveness. So when we ask for that forgiveness, we're creating the vessel to rebuild the temple, to take it back from the Greeks, to re-sanctify the oil, which of course is the oil of the mind, and to re-empower our ability to forgive. Now, if you ever noticed in your life, I've noticed there are periods where I feel very forgiving to people, and then there's periods where I don't. And it's interesting how when you don't forgive one time, then the next time God sends you an opportunity to forgive, well, I miss it again. And whereas the opposite is also true. When you forgive one person, then it's very easy to forgive the next person and the next person and so on and so forth. Next thing you know, you become that little miniature Beit HaMikdash, that little miniature place of forgiveness, which is atonement, which is kapara, which essentially takes place on Yom Kippur. Now the Rebbe is going to go on to tell us more about the whole idea of the destruction of the Mikdash, and this is amazing. You'll hear, "Va'atem bechitem bechia shel chinam." Right, the rabbis teach us that God said to the Jews after they saw the land of Eretz Israel, and they saw the giants, and they saw the difficulty of the land, and they cried and said, "Oh, we can't overcome these giants, and we can't move into the land. Let's stay. We want to stay out in the desert." And God said, "Oh, you're crying tonight for nothing? I'll show you what crying's about." And from that night, later, Ani ekva lechem bechiya ledorot. I will make a day where you cry every generation. Ki oto halayla leil tisha b'av haya, because that was the same day, the 9th of Av, the day of the destruction of both the first and second temple. Well, that was also the night that the Meraglim, the spies, came back and spoke badly about Eretz Israel. So, you look around today, everybody, people all over the world seem to feel it's a free ticket to criticize the Jews and criticize Eretz Israel and criticize Zionism and criticize, anything else connected to something Jewish. And they don't know what they're doing to themselves. What's going on in Belgium? I hate to be in Belgium when the levee breaks, as they say. Well, nonetheless, this night was the destruction of the Mikdash, and Moshe Rabbeinu, on this he was praying Salachna. Moses, of course, had vision into the future. Moses knew that when he was calling for forgiveness for the Jews, for the sin of the Meraglim, he saw in the future that yes, there would be a Beit HaMikdash and it would be destroyed. Ki bezeh hachet v'hapagam tluim kol ha'avonot, because he tells us a deep secret now. Because the idea of evil speech is like the center column of all other sins. And that's what he says here, that all other sins are tluim, are dependent on the sin of evil speech. Because when a person is overwhelmed by his desires to do something that's against the Torah, God knows about that. God, we're built physical beings, we have desires, we have lust, all kinds of issues. We're raised in environments where theft is praised and where licentious behavior is considered honorable. Now, when you're born in a culture like that, God understands better than we do how hard it is to change. But when it comes to speaking evil about certain things, especially holy things, that's where the problems begin. And that's why this sin causes all the other sins. Because the pagam of the Beit HaMikdash was actually evil speech. And where do we see it from the Gemara in the story of Kamsa bar Kamsa? There was a Jew who was having a bar mitzvah and he had a person in the community he didn't like. So the guy he didn't like came to the bar mitzvah Suda anyways. And he's told him to leave the Suda, and he embarrassed him in public. And so that person, that other Jew that he didn't like, that he asked him to leave the meal, he went off and told the Romans, these Jews, you think they're so holy? They won't even accept your korban. And then he made sure that the Roman who was bringing a sacrifice, there was a small defect in the eyelid of the calf, and it was rejected by the Kohanim, and the Roman became incensed, and this started the cause and effect relationship that led to the destruction of the temple. Now this was under Titus, who was the emperor of Rome at the time. Actually, I think he was the legionnaire general in charge of Eretz Yisrael at that time. But regardless, so you see the evil speech of one Jew to another caused the destruction of the temple as well. All he had to do is let him eat his meal and say goodnight. If you don't like him, but you don't embarrass people in public. And you don't hurt their feelings because you want to get a little bit of revenge. See, there was no forgiveness. And without the forgiveness, why do you need the mikdash? And so Hashem took away our mikdash. So this story about Kamsa bar Kamsa is interesting too, because the idea of Kamsa is the rabbis oftentimes will give symbolic names to the characters in the Talmud to teach us about their characters, and he doesn't tell us their name was Smith or Jones or Rosenberg. He tells us Kamsa and bar Kamsa because Kamsa is Veleshan Kamtsan, a tightwad, a person who doesn't give. And that was clearly what happened. He's having a big meal with 200 or 300 people. What does he care about one more person? And what does he care about the little debt that they probably were arguing about? So the rabbis call them Kamsa, Lashon Kamtsan, Bar Kamtsan. The two of them together. Anyways, this is a very dangerous thing, but it happens a lot. Unfortunately, if you're a lawyer, you hear about these stories every day. And if you're a therapist, you also do. But nonetheless, it was Mansher Beit HaMikdash Hayikayam, but when we had the Beit HaMikdash, Hayinu Niki'im Avanot, then we were clean of sins. Now, someone asked me, what does it mean clean of sins? It means that the din, the negative energy of the act is removed. It does not mean that my heart is completely clean from the desire. Nikayon, cleanliness, means I don't even have the sin. It's gone. The desire is left me. But the first level is just removing the negative energy that's created by the sin. Then we want to remove the second level, is removing the desire for the thing itself. And this is why we see that really only Hashem can cleanse us with His holy infinite light from all these desires that we accumulate in this world. So don't confuse the two. There's two levels here that are very important. There's the removal of the negative energy created by sin, and then there's the removal of the desire to do the thing itself. Okay, and so each day they were removed. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody was at Tzaddik Amor, but it does mean that every day that Am Yisrael started with a clean slate with God. Now, each person still had to deal with their desires, and that's why Rabbi Nachman gave us his Bodadus to talk to Hashem about our desires. Say, look, Hashem, I have this desire, and it's really getting in my way, and it's causing me lots of problems. Please take it away. He can do that. And that's what the holiness does. That's what the Ein Sof light does. It comes into us and pushes off those old shells of our former experience. And so the cleanliness that is created by the Mikdash, he says, Tzedek yalin ba. Literally, righteousness will sleep with it. In other words, over the night, Am Yisrael wakes up clean and new again. Ki Yisrael hem Am HaKadosh, lefi go to ruchaniyut dakutam, en yocholim lisa alehem amasa shel avon. Right? Because Am Yisrael is holy, and they can't bear the weight of sin. There's nothing worse than carrying around guilt. Now, there's all kinds of levels of bad feelings that we carry around, but the sense of guilt, it permeates everything else, and it weighs us down. Who needs that? This whole guilt, I feel guilty about this, I feel guilty about that, it becomes pathological eventually. It becomes what we call codependence. I'm so guilty, I'll do anything not to feel guilty. And that means take responsibility for things that aren't my responsibility. And that's not healthy. I have to take responsibility. When I take responsibility for what I can, guess what? I don't have to worry about all that guilt. Jewish guilt, Jewish mother's guilt. You've heard of that before, I'm sure. If you go out with her, I heard that scream a few times. People throw out guilt like it's nothing. Oh, if you don't come on time, just that word tells you guilt is on the way. And it's really not fair because we're not in control of reality and God is. But anyways, it's very hard for a Jew to carry the weight of sin, the Rebbe tells us. And because of that, we need the Beit HaMikdash. Yikaper aleinu b'chol yom, to create atonement every single day. From the time the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, since we lost the Mikdash, we really can't cleanse ourselves the way we need to. And the way we need to is you're like a child who's pure of sin. You ever see children? There are things that they never even think about. They're so pure. And an adult who's already seen the world a little bit is like, oh, amazing. The child is so pure and innocent. That's the state of purity we want to return to. That childlike innocence where the sin is not even in your spectrogram. It's not even in your mind. But without the Mikdash, it's very hard. And now he goes to a personal level. He says there's nobody at the level of Moses who could cause the repair, could cause the cleanliness and the return to the soul of the Jewish people as a whole. Okay, Masar nafsho l'Yisrael. Therefore, Moses, he gave his entire soul to God, and he said, "Salachna la'avona amazeh, forgive this nation for their sin. Ve'im lo macheni na min sifracha." And then he says, "No, if not, then erase me from your book. Erase me from your book, God. I'm not interested in being the most famous person who ever lived." And Moses really is one of the most famous people who ever lived. And he said, I don't want to be in your book if you're not going to forgive the Jews. What good is the book if the story ends bad? What kind of, no one likes a bad ending. And if the Jews have been destroyed because of the sin of 10 spies, actually 12, what? That's a terrible ending. No one likes a movie like that. And so Moses said, forgive the people or erase me from your book. Now, what's God going to do? God can't change the story in the middle of the script. I mean, he could, obviously, but it would have made him look bad. God doesn't want to look bad because God is perfect. He knows the way the thing needs to go. So he forgave the people. And she says, and when Moses merited to cause the atonement to the Jewish people, Hanukkah tabayit. From that, we create this concept of Hanukkah, of creating the house. And of course, the house of atonement, the time that the atonement is greatest is on Shabbat itself. Because Shabbat, that light comes in your soul when you keep Shabbat, even if you don't say, I'm sorry. Even if you don't say, I forgive. Let's say you don't want to forgive somebody. It happens all the time. Someone hurts you and you don't want to forgive. But you keep Shabbat. Just by keeping Shabbat, you're automatically causing a change in your relationship to that pain and in your relationship to the person who caused you the pain. And so Shabbat also is the concept of time in holy space, which is the Mikdash. So we're causing the return of the house and on Shabbat, and the two concepts together create salachna. They create complete forgiveness. And I'll tell you, this is if a person has something bad happens to a person during the week and you just can't seem to shake it, keep Shabbat and Friday night, you'll see that it's gone. It's taken away. By the time you finish davening mincha, it's over. And it happens over and over. It happens like that. So sometimes we need the Shabbat to give us that new power light to push off that sin, to push off the resentment or whatever forgiveness I need to have, etc. And Rebbe Natan of Breslov writes that every time I weep for the limitation of my love, because I suddenly recognize where I didn't love you, where I didn't open my heart to you. And that is also a concept of forgiveness, because I'm actually forgiving myself for being human, that my love is not perfect. And my love is not eternal, and it's not infinite. And I just hit the wall of my boundary of love. I love everybody but you. Well, that doesn't usually hold up too long. Now, when we have this idea of Chanukah Tabayit, then the Hefech Churban Habayit, which is the exact opposite of the destruction of the temple. So you see that Hanukkah is the rebuilding of the temple, and on Yom Kippur, we're already starting to request this forgiveness that will lead to the building of the temple. And every person, again, he repeats the idea, every person according to his ability to create that forgiveness on Yom Kippur, that repairs the destruction that was caused in the Mikdash. And so when you rebuild the Bayit, guess what? You rebuild your own power of forgiveness. And that's really what we're here to do. And that's a holy thing. You know, if you look at nature, I don't see a lot of sharks going around forgiving people, you know. I don't see a lot of, pythons taking it easy on their prey. I don't see anything in nature that's forgiving like man. And certainly we have what to forgive. And certainly we all need forgiveness. So when we need forgiveness, the rule is forgive somebody else. And we'll get the forgiveness. So Shabbat is coming in Eretz Yisrael. The dark clouds have been. We've had the rain and the wind and everything's flying in every direction. But Shabbat is coming, and we pray to Hashem that makes Shabbat easy. We say Shemesh b'Shabbat tzedakah la'aniyim. Shlomo Melech said that when there is sun on Shabbat, it is considered charity for the poor, because back in the day, the poor people didn't have electric heaters and people to burn their oven for them all Shabbat long. And people were cold and people were hungry. And it wasn't such a nice thing to have a Shabbat where you're cold and hungry. So when it's warm and it's clear, we ask Hashem for that to make it easy for everybody to enjoy Shabbat even more. There's plenty of time for rain. So we should all have a holy Shabbat. We should have that forgiveness in the heart. Understand that we're rebuilding the power of forgiveness that is inherent in the Mikdash, and it's happening in us. And that's why Shlomo Melech also said, Ish hacham yechaperena, that the wise man will cause atonement, because he hears your sin and he's able to embrace it with God's love and then release it. So this is the work we all have to reach out for, and I want to look forward to seeing all of you next week on our daily Patreon class, on our Ruach HaKodesh meditation and divine inspiration masterclass. And we're putting out something about Breslov and Chabad, a very interesting series that we're beginning about how Rabbi Nachman's teaching spread into the tzaddikim of our generation. And each of the tzaddikim of our generation were actually embodying the teachings of Rabbi Nachman, which is an astounding thing when you see it in action. And we start with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and we're going to learn about Baba Sali and Rav Kaduri and all the other great tzaddikim that I met and saw in action. And by seeing them, you see, wow, this guy's doing what the Rebbe writes about. So we're going to have a series on that, and it's going to be, it's going to be a great Shabbat with Hanukkah. We have 3 Sefer Torahs being brought out with Rosh Chodesh as well. So there's plenty to dance and sing about. We should have a great Shabbat, and we'll see you next week. All the best.